Ambiguity, you'll remember, means where two possibly different interpretations could be true at the same time. So let's look at the word cursed. This might suggest that he believes his mind, his thoughts, have been affected by the witches, and he's thinking evil thoughts. Now this evil might be the imagined death of himself, or an attack by Macbeth on Duncan, or an attack by Macbeth on Fleance. But beneath that, the cursed thoughts might be his own. He might want to see Duncan die, because that means his son is closer to becoming king. These thoughts are against nature, against the natural order, against what God would want. And so that's why he sees the thought as cursed. And he gives way to these ideas in repose, at rest. And perhaps that's why he's constantly on the move. And the next day he's going to go out riding all day with Fleance. Ironically, that leads to his own death. But there's possibly a sense here that he fears stillness. He fears time where he gets to think to himself because of the horrible thoughts that he's beginning to have. And this is exactly what happens to Macbeth. He actually asks the stars to hide their fires, and it's as though heaven has listened to him, or as though the witches have made it happen, because here we are at night time and the stars have hidden their fires. No one's going to see what he does to the king. And when Macbeth does enter, Bankrow immediately starts hiding things himself. And so look what happens to the syllable pattern. 10 syllables for nearly every line. In other words, he's trying to suggest to Macbeth that nothing is wrong. And what could be wrong would be that he suspects Macbeth, and he can't afford to let Macbeth know that he suspects Macbeth's motives. He's already thinking that Macbeth might be about to kill the king. And the relationship between Banquo and Macbeth is just as odd as that between Banquo and his son. As soon as Macbeth arrives, symbolically Banquo asks for his sword. Give me my sword. As though he realises that he's being threatened. And of course Macbeth is a threat to him. He asks who's there, and interestingly Macbeth doesn't reply, "It's me." He replies, "A friend." Suddenly he's speaking in the third person, as though he's already distancing himself from Banquo. And his language already reveals to us, and perhaps to Banquo, that Banquo is a marked man. There's no longer that closeness between him and Macbeth. And we instantly realise that the description, a friend, is actually false. This is not a friend. And Banquo must realise it too. And the question we have to ask is, does Macbeth let this out accidentally, or is it deliberate? Does he want Banquo to know that he's a potential victim? We can read this speech as Banquo trying to remind Macbeth, quite subtly, not to kill the king. First, he emphasises Macbeth's status. What, sir? Not yet at rest. Banquo and Macbeth are both captains, but he's immediately signalling to Macbeth that he thinks of him as more noble. In other words, he's reminding him of the fact that Duncan has just valued him so highly by giving him the office of Thane of Cawdor as well as Thane of Glamis. It's a subtle reminder to Macbeth to enjoy the riches and the honours that he's just received. Banquo also emphasises to Macbeth how vulnerable the king is. He's defenceless in his bed, as though Macbeth should have some sympathy for him rather than see it as an opportunity to murder him. And this is emphasised with the description of Duncan. He is in unusual pleasure. In other words, Banquo's reminding Macbeth of just how much pleasure Duncan is taking in him, that future honours will come to him. After all, Malcolm may well die much before Macbeth, and the king could make Macbeth king in the future. There's no need for murder to make the witch's prophecies come true. Next, Banquo hammers home the point. He has sent forth great largesse, lots of financial generosity. He's making Macbeth rich. don't kill the golden goose that lays the golden egg. The king is looking after Macbeth's interests, and Banquo wants Macbeth to enjoy that, not to kill the king to get the kingship so early. And perhaps sensing Lady Macbeth's role, he points out how generous Duncan's been to Macbeth's wife with this large diamond. And it's a diamond that Banquo himself brings. In other words, Banquo is like the king's emissary, trying to buy Macbeth's favour. He's really telling Macbeth, do not kill your king. You don't need to. And then we come to the penultimate line of his speech, which you'll notice is 11 syllables long. And that extra syllable is included in the word hostess. By the name of most kind host and shut up. He could there refer to Macbeth as a kind host, but perhaps sensing that it's Lady Macbeth who is the evil that will tip Macbeth's ambition into murder, he adds this extra syllable, hostess, and it's the hostess who's wrong. She is the one that makes this an 11-syllable line. Again, a signal that something unnatural is going on, something upsetting. And we have to ask ourselves, does Banquo sense Lady Macbeth's evil, or is it an unconscious thing where he's just picked up on her attitude? So now we need to start judging this relationship between Banquo and Macbeth. They've been best friends, companions in arms, they've literally trusted each other with their lives in battle, and they can't afford to let that relationship slip, because the first person to let the other know that they're suspicious gives the other one an advantage, and also runs the risk of Banquo going to the other nobles and declaring what the witches have said. So Banquo's advice that Macbeth ought to take time to enjoy the successes that Duncan has bestowed upon him and on his wife don't work. Macbeth stumbles, and he says this strange line that he's unprepared. You'll notice that that's a 5-syllable line and doesn't match Banquo's 6-syllable line. And so Shakespeare the dramatist once more is showing us that these men are not in harmony. They're in conflict. Macbeth's next 2 lines are a kind of convoluted apology for not really paying Banquo proper attention. But let's look at the language that he uses. So he begins by saying that his will, his free will, has become a servant. And so he's immediately focusing straight away on the idea of status. And of course, status and the ambition for status is what's driving him to kill Duncan to become king himself. And servant and defect are juxtaposed together. These words are put together for a simple reason, I think. They're to show us what's going on in Macbeth's mind. His secret passions, if you like, are leaking out here. And he sees being a servant to Duncan, to the king, as a defect. And then he contrasts that with another juxtaposition, this idea of freedom. And so, following Duncan, who's been a marvellous king, is no longer something that he values. He values more the freedom to act as king himself. And allied to that is the idea of making himself king. And that's what the word wrought means, to make. And so in Macbeth's mind, his own language describing his free will reveals to us how what he really wants is to make himself king, to make himself free, and not be a servant. So Banquo must find this response slightly odd. He's just suggested to Macbeth all the reasons why he should enjoy his current state, and Macbeth's completely ignored them. He's not responded to them in any way whatsoever. And so he replies with, "All's well." But of course those words are not sincere. That's a 2-syllable line, which goes with Macbeth's 6-syllable line, and he makes a line of 8 syllables, and this really jars with the 10-syllable pattern. And another way it jars is in the iambic pentameter. So the next thing you need to learn about iambic pentameter is that it has a pattern of unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, which I'll show you in a moment. So to show you that, I'm going to jump down to this line of Macbeth's, where he's speaking in perfect iambic pentameter and showing his inner control. I'll read it to exaggerate. If you shall cleave to my consent when 'tis. Yes, so if you will cleave to my consent when 'tis is reading it more naturally. And Shakespeare uses iambic pentameter to recreate a natural voice. It tells his actors how to speak. But that's only one use for it. Let's look at Banquo's lines. Here we can see that the stresses are all over the place. All's well. I dreamed last night of the 3 weird sisters. And you can see the stresses are quite different, and they reveal Banquo's unease. He says all's well, but he means the opposite. It's almost an oxymoron. Some commentators think this line is in fact a mistake, because they look at the chronology of the events of the play. This is the same night of the day in which Macbeth and Banquo have defeated Norway. And so the action has taken place on that very same day. They met the witches this day. So if Banquo's line is true, he dreamed of the witches the night before he met them. Interesting, isn't it? This suggests that they have a really strong link with Banquo. Perhaps the benefits they offer him are to satisfy his dreams also. Banquo is only different from Macbeth in that he hopes for success for his son rather than for himself. Of course, Macbeth can't wish for success for his own son because he famously doesn't have one. This is the infant that Lady Macbeth imagined dashing its brains out if she had broken a promise in the way that Macbeth had done. So I don't think that is a mistake. Shakespeare just didn't suddenly get his timescales wrong. I think he wants to tell us something important about Banquo's thought processes. And those thought processes are also about self-interest, and he leaks this out in the use of his words here. He says to Macbeth, to you they have showed some truth. And in the one instance, he's asking Macbeth to open up about this. Come on, let's talk about what the witches actually said. But he only uses the word some truth here. He doesn't want to think about Macbeth yet becoming king. And even more, he doesn't want to get Macbeth to think about his own son becoming king. But once the words are out, it plants the seed into Macbeth's mind. And Banquo, in a way, is sealing his own fate here. If he'd not mentioned the witches, perhaps he would have lived. But Macbeth's fears in Banquo, which stick deep, I think start right here, with Banquo's obvious fascination with what honours will be bestowed on his own son Fleance. Macbeth's response is an obvious lie. I think not of them. He can't possibly expect Banquo to accept that, especially as Banquo's just reminded him of them. Instead, he just dismisses the subject. This is doubly ridiculous because he's just this day been made Thane of Cawdor, and any man, any woman, any person would naturally think about what the witches had said. And we can see that Macbeth has perhaps deliberately let Banquo know that his time's up. He is actually going to be the target of Macbeth's violence and desire for kingship. The fact that he's thinking of kingship again is revealed in his choice of language. When we can entreat an hour to serve, instead of saying that we'll spend the hour, which you'll notice spend is given here, he uses this word serve again because he's thinking of his own status as servant to the king, a status that he wants to overturn. And we would spend it in some words. And interestingly, this is a 12-syllable line. It's got 2 syllables too many. And I think these are the ones. These are the words that he doesn't want. He wants deeds, not some words. And therefore, they're the extra syllables in the line. this reveals to us perhaps that Macbeth is intent on action, and that action is going to happen tonight when he kills the king. And then there's an ironic flipping of the status here where he pretends that Banquo is superior to him and that it's Banquo who's going to grant the time. We can clearly see the irony because Banquo's just asked here, well, let's talk about the weird sisters. And Macbeth says, oh, well, we'll do it when you can make the time. Banquo's making the time now, but Macbeth's just fobbing him off. And Banquo knows this, and Macbeth knows he knows this. And so I think this is the turning point in the play where Banquo realises that his life's in danger, and so is that of his son, even before Macbeth decides to kill Duncan. Macbeth's next words perhaps try to dig himself out of the hole that he's just created here. Banquo says to him, "At your kindest leisure. I'll speak to you when you kindly want to." But he uses the word kindly to remind Macbeth of being kind. You don't resort to murder, don't take that action. That's the subtext of what he's saying. Macbeth's reply, "If you shall cleave to my consent," is also very revealing. So if you follow my will, cleave to my consent, I shall make honour for you. There's going to be either titles in it for you, or money, or land. And so effectively, he's offering Banquo a bribe. If I become, says Macbeth, if I become more powerful and rich, I'll make sure some of that power and wealth is spread to you. If you stay loyal to me, tell no one about the witches, I'll look after you. But look at the word he uses. He uses that word cleave, which also means to chop up or to chop in half. And again, the subtext is clear. The violence of his language is indicating his feelings for Banquo. This violence is going to be turned on him, not just on Duncan. And similarly, the word honour is greater than riches. In other words, Macbeth is thinking about his own status if he becomes king, the ultimate honour. And so his desires keep leaking out in the subtext of what he's saying, and he can't seem to help himself, even though his 10-syllable line in perfect iambic pentameter there seemed to indicate that he's in control. And then Banquo's reply reveals that his allegiance, his loyalty is to the king. But he does this very subtly because he can't tell Macbeth, look, I'm still loyal to the king, therefore I won't support you if you kill him. He can't let Macbeth know that he's worked out exactly what Macbeth is going to do. So he talks about his allegiance, which we can understand is a reference to the king, and his bosom being franchised. The franchise is essentially a vote, and he's saying, look, if I've got to take a vote in the matter, I know where my allegiance is. It's actually to the king. Now, although he says that, he might want Macbeth to think, actually, I'll be loyal to you as well, because he then changes it to say, I shall be counselled. In other words, I'll be guided by you. And he characterises this as a kind of profit and loss agreement. And so this is the idea of honour not being lost, that's the idea of loss, and then profit comes with the idea of augment, to increase. So he's talking about his honour. I'm not going to lose honour, I'm going to increase it, and how am I going to increase it? By staying loyal. And Macbeth might take these words to mean that Bankrow is loyal to him. But we, the audience, understand that actually he's probably loyal to Duncan and not Macbeth at all. However, a third possibility is possible here. This could be a political deal. Bankrow could be saying, in so many words, the political deal could be Bankrow saying, look, I'll keep quiet when you kill Duncan, but in return I expect you to give up your kingship at some point, without murdering me, Bankrow, and my son Fleance, and giving that kingship to my son. And these words are completely unspoken, but it's the subtext of what's being discussed. But Macbeth completely rejects this opening. He refuses to negotiate with Banquo. Instead, he dismisses him very politely, but it's a dismissal nonetheless. Good repose a while. In other words, get to bed and rest. I'm not going to discuss this now, and the implication is, although I've said we'll discuss it later, actually this is a lie, and Banquo must know it is.